It is all defense all the time for the San Francisco 49ers. 4 picks, 4 defenders, including 3 on day 2. We're breaking down Alfred Collins, Nick Martin, Upton Stout, and everything that went down in rounds 2 and 3 of the 2025 NFL Draft right now.
You are Locked On 49ers, your daily San Francisco 49ers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On 49ers. Brian Peacock and Eric Crocker at BD Peacock at Crocky209. Thanks, everybody, for making us your first listen on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Love our everydayers out there. Thanks for hanging with us throughout the NFL Draft and beyond. And if you're new to the program, welcome. Subscribe on YouTube or anywhere you listen to your podcasts as we roll through post-draft and get you ready for the season as well. We still got a big day 3 to talk about as well, coming up with a lot more picks for the San Francisco 49ers. But let's start with day 2. Mykel Williams, big defensive end in round 1. Croc, you think the 49ers want to get better with their run defense? Mykel Williams.
I think they do.
6'5", 270. He's an elite run defender for a defensive end. And what do they do in round 2, following it up with pick 43? Alfred Collins, maybe the biggest man in this NFL draft, 6'5", 330 pounds. And I'm not a fan of the pick. I got to say, I'll just jump right out with it, Croc. I evaluated Alfred Collins a month ago, whenever it was, when Alfred Collins came up for us. And I just don't see a 3-down player, and it's the wrong down, that he's not of value to the 49ers at all in a passing league. To draft a player like that in the top 50, I don't see the value there, but I understand what the 49ers are trying to do. And I think they told us a story that they have to get stronger up front and get better on defense and keep Fred Warner clean.
I think that's the biggest part right there, keeping Fred Warner clean. You know, you and I definitely wanted the 49ers to attack the defensive line. And I am excited that they went into the trenches and got a big body that I've been really kind of clamoring for some years now. Who's the big body, 2-down run stuffer, right? Like, I've been wanting the 49ers to get that guy. They got him, but I think a little high. And you and I also talked about the consensus, right? Where a lot of these players are going, or the 49ers, how they are, was it dead last in the NFL with kind of reaching for guys?
Yeah, reaching versus consensus draft boards, the 49ers reached the most. They were the furthest off of consensus in the negative side. So drafting players higher than consensus in the NFL draft.
Right. So
since, I don't remember what, I think it's since 2017.
Yeah. I like the thought of what they're trying to do in the trenches. But I also thought they would do this, like, Norman Lott. Now, I think he went 2nd round, so he went higher than expected. But we were mocking him for what he was and what he potentially could be to the 49ers in the 3rd round, not where they drafted him. But I also will say this. A lot of the guys that I had the 49ers taking in my mock draft, they were going much higher than what the mocks were having them go. So the linebacker out of UCLA, instead of being able to, him just being there between picks 40 to, 60, well, he was drafted pick 33, the first pick in the 2nd round. And I think that was going on a lot. So the 49ers went and felt like, hey, we got to get this guy. And they drafted him at a spot where I wasn't quite expecting it.
In the chat, Collins great at batting down passes. Yeah, he's batted out a bunch of passes. He's huge. He's got, not only is he 6'5", 330, he's got 35-inch arms too. So yeah, he's going to be on the punt block and on the kick block team for sure. He's going to get his hands up. Maybe that's his value potentially on passing downs, or at least passes that happen on early downs when he's in the game. 1 sack last year, his only year as a full-time starter. He was kind of a role player at Texas in his previous seasons. He's huge and he is strong. So you see a guy who will just bat people out of the way and stuff the run and can 2-gap and can doesn't give ground and can push people out of the way. Like, he is a massive man. He is a nose tackle. He is a true big man in the middle of a defense. I don't think he'll be on the field on 3rd downs. for sure initially, and who knows, maybe ever. I'm not sure what the 49ers view him as far as his pass rush skills and what that could be. I'm looking at the chat right now. I see James says that I'm not sure who they is. They compared Collins to Chris Jones. I mean, just no. I mean, strength wise, sure. Like Collins will like bat people out of the way. Like he is strong and he is big. But to be honest with you, I think he might be too big. Too big for two reasons, Croc. Too big because he gets a little high and gets a little upright. And we've seen this in the past. And Javon Kinlaw comes to mind. I think he's a better run defender than Javon Kinlaw. I think he's not as good of a pass rusher as Javon Kinlaw, because Javon Kinlaw was just a little bit twitchier, a little bit more athletic. But both, obviously huge guys, and the 49ers trying to find that guy, and maybe they'll end up liking Alfred Collins, and he'll stick around longer than Javon Kinlaw did. And hopefully he doesn't have and that's one thing that's very different between Collins and Kinlaw, by the way, Croc, is health. And I think he's maybe missed one game in his college career, I think, with Alfred Collins. So he's been healthy, which is huge. And, they're not – it has to be why they didn't draft Will Johnson, right?
Is this a guy that, most importantly, what I'm looking for from him, you talked about keeping Fred Warner clean. Can he take on doubles? Is he going to be stout versus there? Does he have a good anchor, right? You talked about him being a better run defender than Javon Kinlaw. And I saw some people say, oh, Kinlaw 2.0. Well, if you got Kinlaw in the second round, you might be a little bit more pleased. Not saying you would be super excited, but you might like that a little bit more. Do you see that kind of ability from him when you turn on the tape where, all right, like, look, you're not going to get this penetrating defensive tackle. He's not a 3-tech. He's definitely more of a nose, but man, he's stout versus the run. And with the first pick, now the second pick, it looks like maybe that's what the 49ers are really trying to do. Be stout versus the run, take away some of these teams' best things, or an advantage that they had last year, maybe making the 49ers have to play defense a little too honest. Now the 49ers can say, you know what? We're going to take away this, and we're going to do this very well. We're going to force you to throw the ball. And, we got Diamador Lenore, we got Renardo Green, we got some guys on the back end that we really like in coverage.
The second reason where his size comes up as a negative, and obviously his biggest positive is his size, right? Like anchor, taking on blocks. He can't beat people out of the way and make plays at the line of scrimmage, sometimes behind the line of scrimmage. He's not going to get far from where he starts, is the other part of him being kind of too big. And, a lot of wide zones out there, and he's not going to chase people very far, right? He just doesn't have that range as an athlete. He has surprisingly some kind of nimble feet at times, working in a small space, and shows the ability to get around guys and make some little moves in the interior, but he's not going to get out and run and chase running backs. And I worry about teams stringing the 49ers out, wide zone. Is he going to be a big factor on those types of plays? And again, passing down value, and it's a passing league right now. And I don't see a pass rush or really a pass rush future for Alfred Collins, which is the big thing of why I think he was more of a late third round guy instead of an early second round guy. And so we'll see what ends up happening with his career. Maybe there's more pass rush there than what I see, but that's how I see it with Alfred Collins right now. I think it was too high. And before we talked about him on this podcast before, and I feel the same way now watching a little bit more of him tonight. I wish I had more time during the draft and after the third round ended and after the second round ended to watch these guys. But Croc, I was actually coaching my son Little League Baseball today, which was tough because it was the worst possible schedule. I'm the coach. It's coach pitch. I gotta throw. I gotta help. Leo made his catching debut, had his whole full catcher's gear on, had to help him put his catcher gear on and take that off. That was fun to watch. Seen him barely move in that catcher's gear. And so I had to leave the house at pick 41. The moment that the Bills traded up and sniped TJ Sanders from the 49ers. Great move, Bills. I think the 49ers might have taken him, but maybe not. Maybe they just wanted the big men, the run defenders. So maybe he wouldn't have been the guy for the 49ers at 43. I don't know. So I heard the pick, and I'm out there on the field, and I'm like, hey, good job. I'm like scrolling, who's going on the draft, trying to look at the draft on my phone while I'm coaching. And it's dad duty. It's important. I can't skip it, right? I'm coaching the team. I'm pitching. I'm the pitcher. It's coach pitch. But I was following the draft, and I didn't have a lot of time to go back and watch some of these guys. But I have watched all the players the 49ers drafted, and I know you've watched Upton Stout. By the way, Croc, a hit, another hit. Far off in the rounds, I had him as a late 5th in my last mock draft. Nick Martin, linebacker out of Oklahoma State. I like this dude. I did not see him going as high as pick 75 where the 49ers took him. But we got to talk Nick Martin. We got to talk Upton Stout, more about what happened on day 2 of the NFL draft. Next. This episode of Locked On 49ers brought to you by LinkedIn. LinkedIn Jobs helps small business owners in so many ways, and LinkedIn knows that if you are a small business owner, if you are an operator, if you are a manager, you wear so many hats. And as a small business owner, your work doesn't end when the clock hits 5. Your business is always on your mind, which means when it's time to hire, you need a partner that works just as hard as you do. That's where LinkedIn Jobs comes in. When you clock out, LinkedIn clocks in. LinkedIn makes it easy to post your job for free, share it with your network, get qualified candidates all in one place. And yeah, when you're wearing all those hats, LinkedIn Jobs has new features to help you do things like write job descriptions and quickly get your job in front of the right people with deep candidate insights. And there's no wonder why 72% of small businesses say LinkedIn helps them find high quality hires. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Just going back here real quick in round 2 before we move on to round 3, Croc. Was there anything that blew you away in round 2, in round 3, aside from Shador Sanders not getting selected at all? Schlesinger started it off in round 2. I know that was a guy that you and I both liked. The 49ers clearly looking at linebackers. I wonder if that would have been their pick at 43, if he was still there. And then, of course, TJ Sanders, who was the guy in my mock draft who was a really good prospect, and the Buffalo Bills clearly moving up in front of some teams, including the 49ers, knowing, I mean, everyone knew the Niners needed a defensive tackle. So I think that was a masterful move if the Bills thought that was worth it for TJ Sanders, and if the Niners were indeed going to take TJ Sanders, which I'm not sure if they drafted Alfred Collins, maybe that was not the direction they were going to go anyway, because they're very different players. We're talking about a nose versus a 3 technique that's all value on the, or most of his value is as a pass rusher and getting upfield, and less value as a run defender in TJ Sanders. But what stood out to you on day 2 of the draft early?
You said aside from Shador Sanders, but obviously that's a huge storyline right now that's kind of taking over the NFL draft. And I'll say this because it has nothing to do with the 49ers. There were the anonymous scouts coming out saying it was a terrible, terrible interview. And there were numerous anonymous scouts that were saying this about Shador. And I won't put this on social media because we know how social media gets, but I will say this. People think it's like this confidence thing, like, oh, they want to humble him and this and that. There's people that's cocky and confident and all that, right? Cam Ward is as cocky and confident as it gets. But there's a line that you potentially can cross when it starts to feel like you're above everything else. And when I listen, this is just me. Who am I? But when I listen to Shador Sanders talk, it sounds like someone that I don't know if I would want my quarterback like coming off the way he does. Now, there's another player that does. You think of Aaron Rodgers. But after you win Super Bowls and all that, and you have the smug kind of attitude or whatever, you gotta get away with it, right? I mean, he's one of the greatest ever, and people kind of put up with it. When they come out of college, they won't put up with it. So it almost comes off to me like he interviewed as if he was Deion Sanders, but you're not Deion. And I remember hearing a story about Deion Sanders, and I think a team handed him a playbook, and they're like, he said, "Oh, what number are you guys picking?" And they were like 10th. And he was like, "Oh, well, here, you can take this back because I'm going to be long gone before y'all pick," right? I think Shador comes off as like having that type of like what he is, and he's not. And the teams were just like, we didn't like the way he interviewed. And I think it really has to do with that more than what some people are making it about. That's just my opinion. But he's still undrafted. I still am a little more shocked that it's like, wow, he's heading into day 3 and he hasn't been picked. But with some of the way that he kind of comes off to me when I'm watching him speak, I kind of understand why a little bit.
Yeah. I think that tracks. That makes perfect sense.
Can
Talent
you
wise.
fake at least, right? Like at least fake not being a little bit. I see somebody in the comments mention Cam Newton. Like
Yeah.
Cam Newton, he probably was great in the interviews and stuff, and still gonna be his confident self. You
Right.
gotta find that balance a little bit. I spent too much time talking about Shador.
He overplayed his hand. Clearly, is one of the things here. Teams like it's wild that a team that needs a quarterback would still not even take him in the third round. That's
Taking Dylan Gabriel and
Dylan
someone
Gabriel.
compared it to Pierce. One of my buddies compared it they're like, man, the guy from Tennessee, he's terrible, like has a terrible attitude or a terrible person.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, but maybe he just faked it better in the interviews. And so you hear these things and you got to check, man, he was cool with us. I'm like, why do you guys feel this way about him? Well, let's see if we can continue to have him be cool with us. He just faked it better because we heard was it Dan Bugler was talking about like the people in Tennessee were saying, man, we can't get him out of the building fast enough. Like we want Pierce gone from University of Tennessee. He faked it well.
Yeah, better faking it. And to be honest with you, it's probably positional too, because it's one thing to have a corner, a wide receiver that's a diva, a pass rusher that's a little bit weird. But when it's your quarterback, maybe that changes things too and changes that dynamic. And overplaying his hand because, I think clearly he wasn't going to end up being a top 10 quarterback just if he was the best guy ever off the field or best guy ever in interviews too. Dude, and Dylan Gabriel, I thought he was like going to be a CFL quarterback too. And he went ahead of him. Like that's kind of wild where we're at right now. Let's talk Nick Martin though, Croc. And one thing that the first two picks of the 49ers draft told us is we're going to draft a monster run defending defensive end and a monster run defending defensive tackle because we're about to draft a 220-pound linebacker and we need to keep those guys clean, right? I think that all kind of comes together and makes a lot of sense. Nick Martin, he was in my last mock draft as a 5th rounder. I loved it when I put on his tape, and I was surprised that not a lot of people were talking about Nick Martin. He's explosive, 4'5", 40, but small. So Dre Greenlaw was sort of an undersized linebacker, right, Croc? Dre Greenlaw is 15 pounds heavier than Nick Martin coming out of school. 5'11", 220. That's about as small as an NFL linebacker gets, even in this day and age when linebackers are getting smaller, Croc. And they drafted him in the 3rd round too. So that they drafted a player that they expect to be a starter if they drafted him that early. But man, he is fast. He triggers and goes and he gets downhill. And I was surprised more people weren't talking about him because Chris Paul was the one that was the, kind of the belle of the ball for 49ers fans. And he was in on the 30 visit. And to be honest with you, I liked the film for Nick Martin more than Chris Paul. And clearly the 49ers did too. So I like this pick a lot. And he's got some athleticism. I didn't really see a lot in coverage where I was like, yeah, this guy's going to be an awesome coverage linebacker, but clearly he has the speed to do it with his size and 4.53 40 time. But man, he flies to the football. He is fast. And Will linebacker all day. He's going to compete to replace Dre Greenlaw.
I was thinking of D Winters and the speed and the closing speed and everything that he displayed on film. And so far, he's still kind of working to put it together. And D Winters not the biggest linebacker out there, but was a tremendous athlete. And now you got another athlete. And I think when you're watching him now, I have not watched his game film the way you have, but I definitely have watched some of the clips and them showing his ability. I would say the biggest thing, what does he look like in coverage? Because when you're not the biggest guy and you're a little light, you're going to be asked to do certain things, especially in coverage, and you would like to see how that looks. So that would be a big thing for me. Like, what does he look like in coverage?
Your guy Xavier Watts, Croc, lasted a little while. Were you a little bit bummed when you saw him fly off the board just ahead of the 49ers pick at 100? He went 96 to the Atlanta Falcons. And then my guy in my last mock draft, Charles Grant, went the pick before the 49ers at 100, a pick number 99. So Niners getting sniped all over the place with some of the prospects we liked for them. Now, I don't know if the 49ers actually liked those same prospects, but it felt like the 49ers got sniped a lot at just about every spot. on day 2 of the draft.
I liked Xavier Watson. You see the production, you see the ability. I think what hurt him was he did not test well. And that's it. You kind of watch him. It's not we do call it the underwear Olympics. But, he had a little bit of I don't want to say bad body as a defensive back, but you didn't see like the muscle. And they want to see all those things. You want to see check the box. Like, not as fast. Yeah, I would like to see a little bit more muscle. Ran on the 4.57 or so. I thought where he got drafted was probably the range that he would go in.
Nick Martin, by the way, his full combine workout, and he did do a full workout, just about a complete workout between, in fact, maybe the only prospect this entire draft, Croc, that did everything eventually between combine and pro day. So 5'11 and a half, 221 at the combine. He ran a 4.53, 160 10-yard split, 38-inch vertical, 10.3 broad jump, 26 bench press reps, and then came back at his pro day and did the agilities with the 4.23 short shuttle, which is really good, and then a 7.20 three cone, which is not as good for a small, fast linebacker, but not a terrible time. The agilities can be weird sometimes, but dude flies the football. So yeah, I like Nick Martin. Let's talk Upton Stout next, Croc. To be honest with you, I don't know if I would have taken Martin in the 3rd round necessarily, pick 75. There might have been some other players I would have taken there. So some people might want to call it a reach. It's definitely a reach versus consensus.
They had a 150 on it. They had a 150 on the consensus.
150 on the consensus, and he went 75. Yeah, so he was, half. He was he should have been half off. He should have been half off discount of what the 49ers paid for that. They paid double. Maybe. And maybe everyone else loved Nick Martin too. You don't know. But he was a player I liked a lot, and I was a little bit surprised that nobody was talking about him, and I would have been happy to get him in the 5th round. And we'll see how he plays as a 3rd round linebacker. But man, that's the territory that's higher than Fred Warner went, Croc, isn't it? What pick did Fred Warner go in the 3rd round?
I don't remember what pick, but it was definitely like middle of the 3rd round.
Like that. Yeah. Upton Stout, defensive back. Is he a corner? Is he a safety? Is he an outside corner? Is he a nickel? The Croc DB scouting report on Upton Stout, the 49ers, 3rd pick of day 2, 2nd pick in round 3. Next. This episode of Locked On 49ers brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. The NBA playoffs are here. Croc, as usual, has got one eye on them as we record this live podcast, and FanDuel is giving new customers an incredible way to get in on the action. And right now, when you join FanDuel, place your first $5 bet, you'll get $250 in bonus bets if that bet wins. Love how FanDuel makes it easy to bet, whether you're betting on your favorite team, betting on the Lakers to lose, diving into player props, 3-pointers, steals, assists, all of it. FanDuel has so many ways to bet on your favorite player props. Plus, after the game tips off, you can even combine your live prop bets into a same-game parlay for a chance to win big. So don't miss out. Head to FanDuel.com or download the app and claim your $250 in bonus bets today. That is FanDuel.com. Upton Stout. Interesting prospect that the 49ers drafted at pick number 100 late in round 3, Western Kentucky cornerback. He is not big, Croc. In fact, he's quite small as nickel defensive backs go. He is not a big player, but Croc, he's got heart. He plays big. I've got a comp for him, but I want to hear your breakdown of Western Kentucky corner and now San Francisco 49ers cornerback Upton Stout.
We came on here talking about the 49ers getting better in the trenches, getting better against the run. And who would have thought that a smaller corner would help the 49ers improve against the run as well? This is a guy that is probably going to line up in the slot. He's not the tallest guy, not the longest guy, with 5'8" and a half. Ran well. I think he's kind of the prototype that you would like to see in that nickel. Good feet, twitchy. I watched a bunch of his one-on-one reps from the Senior Bowl, and you just see how scrappy he is in coverage and showing that speed to be able to run with guys vertically. And then, you continue to watch him and see some of the other things he does, man, in the run game, and sending them on blitzes and being able to track guys down from the backside. I'm like, man, give me a nickel that's like this guy. He's done a really good job of just making sure that he's active and involved with a lot of plays, whether it's in the passing game or the run game. So he identifies to me as a nickel, and it kind of tells me a little bit about what the 49ers maybe plan to do, keeping Lenore on the outside and potentially developing a guy like Stout in the slot. Now, I will say this. The nickel position is a little bit more difficult going into the NFL to come in right away and be able to start and make an impact. So this may be something that maybe takes a little bit of time. And we've seen that with guys, but just seeing how he's able to run fit in college, maybe his transition is a little bit faster. Because a lot of times you see an outside guy transitioning into the nickel as opposed to a guy that's like, man, I've been playing the nickel and I've been playing a physical brand of football.
Yeah, and the fact that he's already done it at the college level, he still started out playing mostly outside cornerback. According to Nick Wagner of ESPN, he did not allow, and he played more in the slot in 2024, but he did not allow a touchdown as the nearest defender in coverage for the last 2 seasons. 409 coverage snaps, 0 touchdowns allowed, Croc, for Upton Stout. And I mean, if he was a bigger guy watching him play, he would have gone higher. I wasn't really mocking nickel types to the 49ers because I thought they loved Demo there and were more looking for a number 3 type of a corner that would be more of an outside corner. Noel Williams, who went a little bit higher in round 3, was one of those guys that I thought would have been a fit for the 49ers, but they did go with the nickel type. And I'm sure they're going to tell us that he is a nickel for them. 5'8.5", Croc, 181 at the combine. Like, that's about as small. Like, that's nearly disqualifyingly small, right? In
Slight
the NFL.
frame too, because sometimes, especially for somebody that's going to be involved in the run game, you see, maybe 5'8.5", but yeah, I weigh 188 pounds. I weigh 190 pounds. To be, 181. Now, Kawan Williams, he wasn't the biggest guy, but man, wasn't he a feisty nickel guy? And maybe that's what they're saying. Robert Saleh came over, or he came over with Robert Saleh around that same time. And for now, like, hey, we got a damn good nickel guy in this little guy we got from the Cleveland Browns. So maybe that's what they're saying.
There it is, Croc. You nailed it. That was my comp. I was going to bring up Kawan Williams, the Shark, right? Was he the Shark?
Yeah, the Shark. I remember watching him in one of his first games. It's 2017. He's in the nickel playing against the Rams. Cooper Kupp's rookie season, and just ragdolling Cooper Kupp and then going to make a tackle. I mean, put his hands on him, threw him out the way on the goal line, and then went and made a tackle. I said, "Oh, this nickel is a little different, right?" So again, if you're getting that from Upton Stout, I think that's something to be excited about.
Here's a good nugget. He was a transfer to Michigan until Harbaugh took the Chargers job. Interesting. Did not know that. So 5'8.5", 181. He did get up to 187 at his pro day, though, Croc. But he didn't run at his pro day. He ran at the combine at 181 pounds. But good speed. 4.44 40-yard dash. So 4.44, 156 10-yard split, which is very quick. 37.5-inch vertical, 10.8 broad jump, 4.29 short shuttle. And at that size, Croc, 21 bench press reps for a dude rolling in at 5'8". Pretty good. It's pretty good. So he puts the time in. He's strong and he plays strong. Look, like, you can't help but love the way he plays when you watch him play. But he's so small. I'm actually surprised he snuck into the top 100 picks just because, size, and he might have been disqualifying for some teams and not having his board, just too much of an outlier size wise. But I love the way he plays. And Kawan Williams was my comp when I watched him. It just jumped off the film, and more top speed at 4.4 than Kawan Williams, I think. So, hopefully not susceptible to those slot fades, right? Exactly.
I like that pick. So out of the 3 picks that the 49ers selected on day 2, from a value standpoint, was that your favorite one? Because again, it felt like Alfred kind of maybe went a little high for what he is. The
I don't think
Martin, it was like,
yeah, I don't think any of the 3 were great. Felt like great value selections, just because of a pure nickel at his size. Upton Stout, usually that's a player that will fall a little bit, even if he is feisty. But at pick 100, late 3rd round pick, that's been an area the 49ers have a rough time finding good players in, and so finding a guy that's scrappy that will stick instead of swinging on some a prospect that maybe you're is a project or that you're trying to develop, or a kicker Like I like it better than that, you know. And he's a player I do like. And then obviously Nick Martin versus consensus. But what is consensus? Consensus is pretty good sometimes. Consensus is way off of what a player really is sometimes. So I don't know where other teams really in on him. A couple quick notes actually from PFF. This was relayed by Twitter user at Black Andy Dalton. Nick Martin, 4th in the country in defensive stops per PFF in 2023. He was 3rd in the country in tackles. He had an insane amount of tackles in 2023. He missed some games in 2024. He only played 5 games due to an injury, Croc. I think that's part of the reason why maybe not as many people were talking about Nick Martin amongst all these linebackers. He had 30 pressures as a blitzer in 2023. And according to this, 170 on the consensus big board. So there you go. That is
170.
That is Nick Martin, who again is a player I liked. Upton Stout, a player I liked. There is a lot to like with Alfred Collins. I just didn't think he was I just didn't think he was going to be a 3-down player, and that's not a top 50 player to me, unlike someone like Mykel Williams, who is a stud run defender, but I think he's got push, and you can't have him on the field, and he will get upfield and pressure a little bit more. That's kind of the difference there. And even then, with Mykel Williams, there's other players I probably would have taken ahead of him at pick 43. In this draft, I would have taken him at pick 43 the way things fell. The board didn't fall great for the 49ers there at the top of the second round. So many targets you went. And I actually kind of hate seeing Will Johnson go to the Cardinals after going Walter Nolan in round 1, that round 1-2 combo for the Arizona Cardinals. You know, there's some bust potential, obviously, there. But, man, there is some massive upside potential with those 2 players that the Cardinals got the Niners going to be playing against a couple times per year.
In the chat, someone asked if Stout can return punts. I'm not sure if he can return punts, but I would say from, again, value standpoint and just kind of what he is and seeing how his game projects to the NFL and what that could look like in, let's say, 3 years, right? Because that's when you judge draft for real. Like 3 years from now, you're going to look back, all right, what does that draft look like? If you told me, you know, he's a legit starter in the NFL and they're going to have to give him a second contract, out of the guys we just talked about, I think he may be that guy. Special teams value as well. Maybe I'm not sure as a punt returner, but definitely with his physicality, his speed, I mean, punt coverage, kickoff coverage, I could see him playing both of those.
Just want to check the rankings on Brugler's Beast right now for the players the 49ers took, because, you know, just going away from consensus and just going to one analyst here that is well respected and a guy I like a lot, and I love the Beast, and I just happen to have the Beast up because it's got the most information on these prospects. Upton Stout, the 21st ranked corner in this class in Brugler's Beast, a 5th round grade. That is, you know, a couple rounds off of consensus, obviously. Nick Martin, same 5th round grade, and he was let's see, amongst linebackers, Nick Martin was ranked linebacker. He was pretty far down the list. Linebacker 15, 5th round grade for Nick Martin in the Beast. And Alfred Collins amongst defensive tackles was a 2nd to 3rd round grade here. So late 2, early 3. And he was the 8th defensive tackle. He was one spot ahead of TJ Sanders, though, in the Beast for Brugler. They both had 2-3, 2nd, 3rd round grades, TJ Sanders and Alfred Collins. 2 very different players, two different positions, essentially.
I see my guy Rob Pierce in the chat, and he says Stout equals Honey Badger type. And I would say no, because Honey Badger was different. Like, coming out of college, he was so good. He had I think, what's it, marijuana stuff going on that made him slide to the 3rd round, but he was kind of like a Heisman type guy. That's what he was supposed to be in college. I mean, kick return, punt return, the plays he was able to make defensively, he was so scrappy. He's getting interceptions. He could play on the outside. He could play at safety, playing that nickel spot. Like, he did everything. He was one of the better. He's probably not talked about this way, but he's one of the better college football players, like kind of my generation, just with how impactful he was on the defensive side of the ball. So he was different, but for other reasons, he slid to the third round. I would say that Stout, and we said it. Jason Aponte in the chat, he said it. It's more Kwan Williams, and Kwan Williams was a really good nickel. And at one point, he's like, is he not the best nickel in the NFL? So even if you felt like he's not the best, but he was damn sure top 3, top 4 nickel in the league. So if you get that, then you'll be happy, even if it's ahead of where the consensus said he should have went.
How annoyed is Nick Sorensen right now? Jed York giving Saleh a shout out. You go 4 straight defensive picks, and you're like, yeah, Saleh's back. Let's get him a whole bunch of defensive players. And Nick Sorensen's like, well, wait a second, guys. What about when I was here? You couldn't draft 4 straight defensive players for me? Yeah. But Saleh's back, and he has a type. And yeah, he's got himself a Kwan Williams type. He's got himself a Javon Kinlaw type. He's got himself a Dre Greenlaw type, and he's got himself a, I don't know. I've seen the Eric Armstead comp as the big end. I don't like that comp for Mykel Williams, but yeah, the big end that can stop the run and give you a little pass rush, maybe from multiple spots, outside and inside potentially. So yeah, it is starting to look a little bit like the old Robert Saleh defense he's trying to bring back to the San Francisco 49ers, which is not a bad thing at all. Thanks everybody for tuning in, making us your first listen every day here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Croc and I will be back breaking down the entire draft, everything that happens on day 3. They got a ton of draft picks, and we will continue to hit the film hard, break down all these prospects even further post-draft, get you ready for training camp, the 2025 season every day. Make sure you're subscribed on YouTube and everywhere you get your podcasts. And Croc and I back next time, post-draft, right here, Locked On 49ers.